Hello, hello. My name is Marty Dixon, and today is November 23rd, 2020. And we're speaking today about Shift of the Ages, Part 3, Signs on Stone. And thank you for joining me. This is pre-recorded. And let's begin here. Okay, this is Shift of the Ages, Part 3. And I've given a lecture on Shift of the Ages, the turning of the astrological cycles within, the last 1,000 to 2,000 years approximately. I've given this lecture for about twice in 2020. And the first one was Shift of the Ages. And the purpose of that was to just offer astrological information to prod our senses and our consciousness and help us to wonder and really ponder the metaphysics of the universe. And it was called Shift of the Ages 2020, and it regarded the 500-year mutation period between the Piscean Age and the Age of Aquarius, and the transition from the Pisces Age to the Aquarian Age. And then the second lecture I gave was Shift of the Ages Part 2, Wheels of Light. And that was a closer look at the cycles of time as they relate to the shifting of the Piscean Age, precessing to the Age of Aquarius. We looked at the yugas, which some people refer to as the Great Year. We looked at the pole shifts and the cycles of the yugas and the Great Year as they relate to say 26,000 years ago, the beginning of the last matriarchy, to today. And these are subjects that Jeffrey talked about that helped perk our curiosity, and this is what I want to lend to you as well. If you're interested about any of those subjects leading up to the lecture today, you can find them on EA Zoom meetings and look through them. They're referenced, and you can scan them to see what subjects you might be interested in and research for yourself, and maybe give your own presentations or conclusions or insights. That would be wonderful. But this is all to prod your consciousness and make you wonder and think outside of the box, hopefully. And I want to thank our audience for joining us, for your dedication. I want to thank our other very dedicated astrologers for their immense knowledge and wisdom. And I want to thank our fearless leader, Linda Johnson, for her tireless efforts in bringing all of this together, which is no small miracle. So thank you for joining us this evening. We live in a state of hyper-awareness. Things are changing so quickly. We're going to look at the astrology in just a moment. And it's nothing new to you. You all know about the Pluto stellium in Capricorn that's existed from the end of 2019 till the present and will continue into 2021. In fact, Pluto will be in Capricorn until 2024 when it ingresses to Aquarius. So we're on the cusp of the Age of Aquarius, and Jeffrey warned us about this time. He said things are really going to start happening very quickly, and we're going to need astrologers and people that can show us the light and can offer elucidation to really help show us what's going on amidst all of the trials and tribulations and chaos, and show us that there's really light at the end of the tunnel if we just stick together, if we stay in the heart, if we just stick together and try to work together. There really is hope, and that's what I want to do with these lectures, is really bring you clarity, elucidation, and hope for the joining of a better future as we join together and work together. So we live in a state of hyper-awareness in which everyone is paying attention to some degree, and most of us who do this work and are interested in this work and join in this interest together have been waiting a very, very long time to witness these events. So they're both amazing and astounding and difficult at the same time, but have heart, take heart, you're in good company. This is a picture of course, let me get my cursor here, bear with me a moment, of the moon and Saturn and Jupiter. And behind Jupiter, which isn't visible, is the planet Pluto. And this was a picture taken in November, just a couple days ago, and Jupiter and Saturn are still supposedly in Capricorn, according to modern astrology, and so was the moon at that time. So a lot of you who have been looking at the night sky since the beginning of this year, late 2019, all through 2020, and we'll be looking in 2021, you're going to see this configuration a lot with Jupiter and Saturn together in the night sky, and they're huge. And the ancients would say that they are talking to us because the ancients thought of the lights in the sky as brethren and kin, and they certainly are telling us something. If we just kind of tune in and listen, they're talking to us big time. The last time Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter were together in Capricorn was in 1285 Common Era, at the time of the Crusades. Before that, the previous time they lined up in this manner, was in 1894, before Common Era, nearly 4,000 years ago, when the civilization known as Babylonia was flourishing. And I might add that not only was it nearly 4,000 years when we had this similar kind of a lineup of Saturn, Pluto, and Jupiter in Capricorn, but we had a similar amount of retrogrades over this Pluto and Capricorn point, which has been about 3 times, I believe, between 2019 and 2020. So this is really a huge deal. If you think there's a lot going on, there's a lot of upheaval and chaos, and structures are crumbling, and there's mass confusion, and institutions are changing, you're right. And this is reflecting that to the Earth. It's not causing it. Jeffrey said astrology does not cause life, it only reflects it. These are just signs in the sky that we can recognize in our modern way what the ancients recognized for thousands and thousands of years prior to our civilization. Babylonia is a small Amorite-ruled state which emerged in 1894 BCE. It was here that some of the earliest known sets of laws, Saturn, were created. Rules, Saturn, for regulating trade and settling disputes. In those ancient times, the idea of establishing rules to better manage human behavior was a precursor for the development of the Judaic, Christian, and Islamic civilizations that emerged from the Middle East. So Saturn has always been like a rock in the sky in astrology. It's something that whenever it's aspected is speaking to civilizations and rules and commerce and trade and the laws that are and the governments that are in effect at the time. And Saturn is a hard one to change. When it does change, it's normally quite earth-shaking and monumental, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. Is a lot of the old rules and regulations are changing and being revised and being looked at anew. Babylon was the capital city of this ancient Mesopotamian kingdom between the 18th and 6th centuries BC. It was built along the banks of the Euphrates River with steep embankments to contain the river's seasonal floods. So Babylon was built as a bit of a fortress against the floods after what we call the Great Deluge. This area used to flood after at the beginning of, or at the end of the last ice age, some 12,000 years ago. And that's why it was built up, and it was supposed to be a very strong, powerful, infinite kingdom that could not be overtaken. The Tower of Babel, narrative in Genesis 11:1-9, is an origin myth. And I have origin myth in italics because there's a lot more to origin myth and mythology and stories and oral traditions than we realize. There's a lot more truth to it and more that's opening up all the time. But the Tower of Babel in Genesis is an origin myth. According to the story, quote, story, a united human race in the generations following the Great Flood, speaking a single language and migrating eastward, come to a land called Shinar. They agree to build a city and a tower tall enough to reach heaven. God, observing their city and tower, confounds their speech so that they can no longer understand each other and scatters them around the world. If you think of this, the hubris of humans thinking that they can build a tower to God. Whether this tower was real or not, we don't really know. I mean, there could be a structure there. Some people think that there is the remains of the foundations of a structure, but the hubris of a population or a people thinking we're going to reach to God and we are going to be in control and we're going to perhaps manage our land and beyond and be a great citadel and light and strength to the world. And God had other plans. God said, you don't know everything, you don't really know the reason for your lives, and I'm going to scatter you and confound your language so that you can no longer understand each other. And that was just to help them to learn how to live and how to be human and understand the natural order of things. They had a lesson to learn, sort of like children. So what the ancients knew. The ancients, as far back as we know, during the last matriarchy, practiced visual astrology, a practice of ascribing attributes or meaning to the lights that they could identify consistently in the night sky. These visual associations have continued up to this time by Indigenous people around the world. And many of our finest astrologers are visual astrologers who teach, practice, and observe a form of astrology called shamanic astrology. Let me get my pointer here, one moment. Okay. The ancient practice of sky watching and ceremony links us to the good ancestors and to all brothers in the sky. So if we think back before really the Greek time when astrology really became interpreted the way that we think of it today, before the Ptolemaic period that really gave us astrology as we know it today, the ancient practice of sky watching was linked to ceremony, and they thought of the lights in the sky as their ancestors and their brethren. The earliest forms of sky watching that we know of attributed no godlike attributes to the stars, planets, and constellations. Instead, they attributed plant and animal associations to the stars. Sky gods came later in the patriarchy period. As far as we know, during the late Egyptian, early Ptolemaic period, and the early Greek definition of a zodiacal wheel or circle of animals has become a common astrological model. So sky gods were not attributed to the matriarchal period when people were looking at the sky. They were only sky gods came into understanding and our use during the patriarchal period. The ancients related to the luminaries as tribe, clan, and brothers, and considered them to be living spiritual beings and ancestors. They engaged in dialogue and relationship with them. They developed dialogue and relationship with the night sky. So I just want to say that Jupiter was the last planet to join the Pluto stellium in Capricorn at the end of 2019. Since then, the three planets, Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto, have been moving closer and closer together, and this came to a head on November 13th, 2020, when they all lined up within 5 degrees of one another. This means that they appear to be lined up one behind the other when viewed from the Earth. The conjunction of these three planets in the sign of Capricorn is an extremely rare occurrence, and it's an extremely powerful occurrence. And it means structures, like I said, in institutions and governments are changing. And it means the rock that we predicated our civilization on, as we know it, all the rules and regulations are being modified and renewed. The Pluto stellium in Capricorn wheel, so to speak, the transiting stellium, has now turned full circle, and we are living in a time when a new kind of civilization can emerge, better aligned with the humanitarian values of the age of Aquarius. Right now, in 2020, we have an exceptional lineup of planets pointing toward the potential for humanity to make a giant shift of consciousness. Will it be one of collective hubris, as in the time of ancient speak directly to God or be as powerful as gods? Or will it be a shift of humility? Obviously, our current westernized logical mindset has a lot to do with how we think we see a reality. The Pluto stellium in Capricorn, currently ingressing to Aquarius, may have other plans. In mid-September of 2020, we felt the change coming as the planets started turning direct after retrograding most of the summer, and they moved into their closest conjunction in November, surrounding the time of the 2020 presidential election. Immediately following the election, the faster planets Jupiter and Saturn are moving swiftly now to the end of their journey in Capricorn. On the day of the winter solstice 2020, Jupiter and Saturn will enter an exact conjunction of 0 degrees of Aquarius, which initiates a very new kind of energy, that of humanitarianism, idealism, revolutionary concepts, and a tremendously higher perspective of collective earthly matters. In short, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius entering a new phase to Pluto in Capricorn has the potential to initiate the creative visioning of a completely different future for the human race. Let the ancient signs and symbols speak for themselves. So this is the moon conjunct Mars that you might have seen in the night sky. The moon, Mars is as close to the Earth as it can be during this time, and it's still very close and very distinct in the sky. It's only minutes behind the rising of Jupiter and Saturn in the southwestern sky in the evening, and it's a bright, very bright red planet. This is to me very profound because a lot of people, myself included, and Jeffrey talked about how we actually came from Mars. They are our progenitors. I mean, we had life on Mars at one time before the atmosphere was destroyed. It was a planet like we have today. So is Mars speaking to us? Yes, indeed. Just look up and enter into communion with this red planet and speak to him and enter into dialogue and try to ask questions and try to meditate on this bright light in the sky. And when you think about it too, and you just meditate on the sky, this is what I was told, is just to meditate on the lights in the sky and speak to them and ask them to teach you. You can start to consider ancient memory and what the ancients knew and what they put down in signs and symbols in say the ancient use of the tarot. This is a symbol of the Tower of Babel. It's a year 1370 depiction. And look at this depiction that was given to us probably around the turn of the century by an artist who had studied the lineage of, I think it's called the Golden Dawn, people who kept the lineage of the ancient inscriptions and symbols from ancient Egypt and incorporated them into the tarot cards. But this is the Mars card, representing unexpected change. Here we have the Wheel of Fortune. This is the Jupiter card, representing change. And here we have the Uranus card, the ruling planet of Aquarius, representing inspiration. I don't want to try to decipher these for you. I'm just saying that we have signs and symbols given to us that have been handed down for centuries, and it's up to us to interpret them. But I think there's a lot more to these symbols and the myths and the origin myths and the stories, the ancient stories and the wisdom teachings than we realize. I want to look at the Wheel of Fortune just for a moment because it does denote the 4 fixed ages: the age of Taurus, the age of Aquarius, the age of Scorpio, and the age of Leo. There's something very profound about these fixed age symbols. And last but not least, we did cover this in the last lecture, Wheels of Light, but I'll go over it briefly again, is that in around the year, let me get to that point here, around the year 3000 BC, the pole star was Thuban in the constellation Cephas. And at 3150 BC was the inception of the first dynasty of Egypt. It was what we call stair-step civilization. All of their culture and civilization was rapidly sped up. We don't know how. It could have been an outside force. It could be visitors from, another galaxy and another planet. We don't know. But ancient Egypt, the first dynasty of Egypt, was incredibly advanced almost overnight. It happened so quickly. And this was the fixed age of Taurus, when again the pole star was Thuban in the constellation of Cephas. Right now we're on the very cusp entering the Aquarian age. We're right here between Pisces and Aquarian age. And something interesting happens approximately every 6,500 years. And that's about the approximate time that our pole star shifts to the exact star, which we do call the pole star. In this case, our pole star is Polaris. And our pole star Polaris is practically dead on due north right now. And so I do expect a lot to happen during the age of Aquarius in terms of stair-step astrology and consciousness in general. And then in around 9800 AD, the pole star will shift to Deneb in the constellation Cygnus. And around 13,700 AD, it will shift to Vega in the constellation Lyra. The reason I mention this is to prod your senses. If you want to look into this on your own and research this, I recommend it, because there's really a lot to be said for pole shifts that occur around 6,500 years apart and these four fixed stages. Okay. So these are the transits of November 20th, 2020. And if we look at the recent Pluto stellium, here's Pluto, Jupiter, Saturn, and the Moon. And the Moon has just ingressed to Aquarius. So it's leading this Pluto stellium with Aquarian ideals and influence. Add to this that Pluto in Capricorn is squaring Mars in Aries. And Mars has just stationed direct after a 2-month retrograde over that square to Pluto. So the fact that we can really see these participants in the sky is no coincidence. And then jumping right ahead, one thing I do want to mention too, I know a lot of people pick out master numbers, and we're dealing with a lot of master numbers this year toward the end of the year. And then I want to point out December 17th, 2020, in about a month's time, the stellium, the Pluto stellium, is led by the Moon in Aquarius, again, once more. And Saturn has also ingressed to Aquarius. So this all speaks to the coming of the Aquarian age. Right now, it's getting a very large boot, so to speak. And it's fascinating for astrologers. So here are the very same wheels. This is November 20th. This is December 17th. But what I've done is I've drawn in the lunar eclipse point of November 30th and the solar eclipse point of December 14th. So I don't want to confuse you. I just want to say that this is a wheel of November 20th. This is a wheel of December 17th. This is where the lunar eclipse is going to land on November 30th. This is where the solar eclipse is going to land on December 14th. So on November 30th, we're going to have a lunar eclipse at 8 degrees Gemini on the North Node. At this time, when the moon is eclipsed, the subconscious mind is also eclipsed, causing the waking mind, or the sun in Sagittarius, to become superconscious. So this is a really good time on November 30th to just relax the mind and really consider what's going on in our world and how the sun in Aquarius is really heightening a lot of what's happening and really bringing truth to light And in my opinion, in the grand scheme of things, and especially the world of politics, separating the truth from the lie, Sagittarius. And in this case, on December 14th, we have a solar eclipse. In this case, the moon and the sun will be conjunct in Sagittarius, and the sun will actually be eclipsed. And when that happens, the waking mind, or the Sagittarius sun, will be eclipsed, causing the subconscious mind, the Sagittarius moon, to become heightening the Sagittarius dream state. And this is all also going to be happening conjunct Mercury in Sagittarius. So what I really want to suggest people do during the solar eclipse on December 14th is to absolutely meditate and empty the mind and let the mind go and just ask the sky to teach you. And then listen. It's going to get incredibly quiet, and you might hear some animal sounds, because animals respond instinctively to the passing of the earth between the to the occultation of the moon, and so occultation of the sun. I'm sorry. And so listen for the animal signs and the direction of the animals, the planets, and the elements. Are they speaking to you? And see what signs and symbols are all around you during that time, during that day. This is a time for deep, silent, intuitive communication, like the animals know, and it's a time to get in touch with the animals and the plant and mineral kingdoms. And this will be especially interesting for those of you who are highly intuitive. And then what I've put in is today, November 23rd, 2020. The election was certified today by the General Services Administration of the Trump administration. It's become official. Joe Biden is our president-elect. And so if you look at the stellium right here, of course you have all of the players in Capricorn. But what you also have is the moon has ingressed to Pisces, and it is exactly conjunct Neptune. And Neptune happens to be retrograde right now. So we're taking another look at Neptune and what Neptune really means. And on a personal, internal level, emotional level, we're thinking, what does Neptune in Pisces really mean for all of us? So again, if you really concentrate on that dream state, ask questions of the sky, and then empty your mind and let your heart see and open up, you're going to get a lot of realization and a lot of downloads, so to speak. But this proclamation of the election certification coming on this day with the moon conjunct Neptune gives me hope that we're learning to learn from the heart, and we're learning to unite more than separate, and we're really starting to learn to let each other have our differences but still have compassion for the other, and just be more accepting and more tolerant. And like I said, learn that we're more alike than we are different. Neptune. The north node of Neptune for everyone on Earth today, the planetary north node, is in Leo, and it has been for at least 1,000 years, and it will be for several more hundred years. And Leo represents the heart, and I think that we're trying to come from a place of heart and kindness and sincerity and meaningfulness, even though we may have different political points of view. The sun is also in the first degree of Sagittarius. The sun ingressed to Sagittarius 2 days ago. I think it was right after Joe Biden's birthday. And so we're now in a time, again, of tolerance and resilience, Sagittarius, where we're coming to understand that we're much more alike than we are different. And a lot's going to be revealed from now until the inauguration day. Like I said, Sagittarius tends to separate the truth from the lie and help us to remember and rely on, again, how alike we are other than different, and strengthen ourselves with natural truths and truths that are self-evident and self-regulating. So these are the transits on December 20th. And on December 22nd. On December 20th, Jupiter ingresses to Aquarius. conjunct Saturn in Aquarius, and they're both 0 degrees. That's going to be quite a time, and again, it's a master number, 1220, 2020. These are master numbers very similar to the time of December 12th, 2012. Very similar master numbers. And there's power in that. I mean, if anyone believes what Pythagoras taught around, I think it was 300 BC, there's a lot of power to master numbers. So both Jupiter and Saturn have now ingressed to the initiatory degree of Aquarius. That means they're just waking up and starting a new phase and starting to think for themselves and create new action and new momentum past Pluto in Capricorn, which stands for tremendous change and the inevitable change of the status quo. December 22nd, moving right along here, Jupiter is in front now of Saturn, and the conjunction, the separating new phase was exact on December 21st, which will be our winter solstice. So you can see, to an astrologer, these are just exciting times. Things are really moving and changing and beginning anew and bringing us clarity and elucidation. You know, we astrology geeks like myself, we live for times like this and definitions like this. So here is Jupiter leading the Pluto stellium, so to speak, and it is conjunct. Yeah, and the Sun has now entered into Capricorn. The Sun has now joined the Pluto stellium, and it is conjunct Mercury in Capricorn. So please remember that Capricorn is manifestation of some sort, and it would seem to me that that new laws or pronouncements are about to take effect big time. This is a visual look at the sky with Saturn and Jupiter conjunct, and Pluto is behind them, and it's, like I said, you can't really see it, but it is conjunct as well. And when you look at the night sky now, you're actually going to see these two planets in the constellation Capricorn, because Capricorn is the modern, current day indication of where these planets are. I'm sorry, yeah, you're going to see the planets in the sign of Capricorn, but Aquarius is a modern, current day interpretation of where the planets are. There's just a few degrees difference here. But the way I look at this, the night sky would tell us something, and then our astrological calculations would tell us something else. Believe me, they both work. The way that I look at this, that I try to explain this to people, is that there's a small lag, only a few degrees, and in some cases only a few days, and especially in the case of the moon, where one planet is in one constellation as opposed to popular astrology saying that it's actually ingressing to the next constellation. And what the way they explain this to people is it takes the human body a little time to catch up to what's really being seen or calculated in a mathematical sense. And so if we think of these planets as just kind of osmosing or catching up with where they really are mathematically in astrological calculation, it's just a small calculation, and it just means that they're taking their time to actually get to this archetype, and they're in transition. So here's a chart of December 24th and December 31st. I'm watching my time here. Okay. So December 24th, what we're going to see is the Sun joins this Capricorn stellium. You can see that right here, clear as day. It's actually conjunct the Capricorn stellium. So that's going to bring, again, light elucidation to this whole dilemma. So or consequence that we have right now in our current day. And so around this time, if you remember these charts around December 24th, things are going to really start to come together, or there'll be more enlightenment, or there'll be more structure or order or understanding of what we're going through right now, which is quite confusing. Okay, and then on December 31st, the last day of the year, this is actually the tightest conjunction of the so-called Pluto stellium planets. Look how tight they are together. And this will add weight to not only the United States situation, but the whole world situation. And I want you to try to notice how toward the end of the year and into the coming new year, tantamount to the inauguration day on January 20th, how the world starts to come together. January 20th, 2021, Presidential Inauguration Day. The sun has ingressed to 0 degrees Aquarius. Some type of future pronouncements are certainly in order, something that's progressive and unifying and humanitarian and enlightening as well. And things will start to hopefully make a little bit more sense. Venus in Capricorn now precedes the South Node. It's past the South Node, which really represents to a great degree our collective past, and joins the stellium that's culminating to Pluto. A new proclamation for the Earth may be in store, Venus representing the Earth, and certainly in an Earth sign, Capricorn. So I think that we're going to start to see perhaps new proclamations for the Earth, to work with climate change and to help preserve the Earth and conservation, so to speak. Mercury in Aquarius now leads the Pluto stellium. So again, this is speaking up some kind of written or some kind of oral presentation of some sort, some kind of proclamation or new ideas or thoughts as to how to institute effective change. The Aquarian-themed pronouncements are to be expected. So I also want to look at the South and North nodes here. Currently, the North node's in Gemini, South node is in Sagittarius. And these two have to do with East and West. Gemini, Jeffrey explained to us, has to do a lot with Asia and the Orient, and Sagittarius has a lot to do with the Western United States and the Plain States. And what these two polarities represent is a synthesis between East and West, or different cultures or different ways of thinking, or different religions or different ways of governing. And what they are trying to do, especially in the north and south polarity of the lunar polar axis, the lunar nodes, is they're trying to bring balance to different people, different ways of looking at things, different cultures. You get my gist. Different locations worldwide, and they're trying to synthesize a more unified orientation to how can we solve the world's problems, of taking care of not only ourselves and the pandemic situation that we have now, but how can we aid each other, ourselves and each other in the process, and work together? How can we create a new concept that meets and partakes of the best of both worlds? So new solutions are definitely in order, that's for sure. Most importantly, we have the North Node in Gemini, applying pressure to that prominent rising Mars in the Sibley chart. So let's look at that. So here's our North Node in Gemini. This is the current chart of the skies. The inner chart is the Sibley chart of the United States Declaration of Independence on July 4th, 1776. On that day at 3:05 in the morning, according to the chart that Jeffrey uses, Mars is rising in Gemini. And right now the current North Node is in Gemini. So we could say to some extent that currently the transiting North Node in Gemini is applying pressure to that prominent rising Mars in the birth chart of our nation. And also it's applying pressure to the subsequent stellium in Cancer. And it looks like the heralding of the matriarchy to me in a big way, because Mars represents the desires of the soul of the world. And it looks like we're trying to unite and unify and embrace diversity, not only with cultures and different nationalities, but different genders. And I just saw the cabinet that Biden was creating today, and I thought it was breathtaking. So, Sibley Ascendant. Our Our nation, in my opinion, according to the 3 a.m. Sibley chart, and believe me, the 515 chart works as well with Sagittarius rising. It's just a slightly different interpretation. But Jeffrey said that at 3 a.m. on July 4th, 1776, was the actual inception of the idea for the Declaration of Independence and the Articles of Confederation. It was a light bulb moment. And if you think about it, 3 o'clock in the morning, it probably was just that, a light bulb moment. So here we have Gemini rising, and the reason I use this chart is I believe that this stands for the oral traditions that were passed down for hundreds of years with the Native Americans that really helped to inspire our Declaration and our Articles of Confederation and our Constitution. So it's been 245 years since the last since the signing of the Declaration of Independence. We are now in a Pluto return. This is huge. So everything that we did back then and we're thinking of back then and everything that our nation has been predicated upon is about to be renewed and looked at and perhaps reinterpreted or restructured or reinforced. But we're going to look at it again. We're back at that light bulb moment right now. That's tremendous. Transiting Neptune is actually opposite the Neptune in the Sibley chart, and it is now in Pisces, which is a very much a unifying archetype, and in 1776 it was in Virgo, which was probably feeling that our forefathers felt that they really had to come together to serve the whole, to create a better government for ourselves and all people involved, service to the whole. And in the Sibley chart, Jeffrey had told us that Uranus is in the 12th house in the 3 a.m. chart in Gemini, and he said he says our nation was founded on religious freedom, and I want you to remember those words. Our nation was founded on religious freedom, because I'm going to get back to that in just a moment. Saturn is culminating to the Sibley South Node and culminating phase to Sibley Moon. So our current Saturn and our current reality and our current governmental and social and educational structures and everything that governs us is addressing our past, is looking again at our past, is glimpsing our past and remembering our past and learning from our past, and perhaps re-experiencing a lot of our past. One thing before I forget, if you look at this chart and how busy it is, and you think of what's going on right now in our world, this is a good representation. This is what makes astrologers excited. There's a lot going on. It's very hard, but there's a lot of hope as well. Jupiter is approaching conjunction with the Sibley Moon in Aquarius right here. Like I said, new truths becoming evident. Maybe even new understanding. I would say new ways of governing or new enlightenment in terms of governing. Really challenging our old belief systems and revising and renewing and helping to interpret what our forefathers had laid down that is more suitable to today. Venus is culminating to Pluto. Bear with me just a moment. Venus is culminating to Pluto and the Sibley chart Pluto as well. Again, this speaks to the earth and the divine feminine nature and the matriarchy to some extent, but it speaks to really addressing the Earth Mother and paying attention to her and knowing that, we need to keep her healthy in order to survive. Mercury in Aquarius leads the Pluto stellium up here in the sky, so there will be pronouncements, exclamations, proclamations, interpretations. There will be a lot of new dialogue coming forth regarding this new administration. The moon is culminating in the culminating degree of Aries. It's at the end of 29 of the constellation of Aries. Something is finishing up currently with regards to Aries, and if you look at the Sibley chart as having Chiron in 20 degrees of Aries, it could be something to do with, disputes or noticing our differences or overreacting, or just being a little bit too quick to react, and we're learning to culminate that way of thinking and move more into a more patient way of thinking and cooperating, because we really need to heal our earth, and if we're going to get along well and heal ourselves, heal our immunity as well. We need to heal the earth to heal our own immunity, and the earth is very, very sick and out of balance right now. North Node in Gemini on ascendant. We're paying attention to this, and we're getting sort of a new way of looking at ourselves, not only of ourselves individually, of ourselves as a nation, but our role in the world. And there will be, again, announcements and proclamations of some sort regarding that. Our identity is changing, not only, like I said, individually, but for our nation and in the world. And the ruling planet of Gemini, again, is controlling or leading the stellium, the Pluto stellium. So, this is a powerful chart. Stelliums, or lineups of planets, have always been considered as auspicious because they inherently reflect the power of the archetypes involved. And if you think about what we can see in the sky, we see Jupiter and Saturn. They're so evident. It's like they're, I don't want to say yelling, but they're appealing to us, as is Mars, which is squaring the stellium. They're really saying, wake up and pay attention. This is what your ancestors saw. We're speaking again. Please listen to us. Please let it sink in. And the transiting Pluto stellium is carrying the weight of change with the Aquarius planets, which are new phase to Pluto and Capricorn. So a new phase in Aquarian thinking and learning and getting along together is dawning. Consciousness that separates from the control and fear of the consensus is what is called an Aquarian awakening or individuating process. This country was predicated on a religious freedom, Uranus and Gemini in the 12th house of the Sibley chart. Certainly with Jupiter, Saturn beginning a separating new phase from the United States soul, or Pluto and Capricorn, it gives those with curiosity, Gemini, the impetus and I would say the permission to think for themselves. Jeffrey pointed out something in these times that we would be looking at radical religious fundamentalism and fanaticism, and we are seeing just that. And what Gemini on the ascendant, what the North Node in Gemini on the ascendant is pleading with us to do is to think for yourselves. Every person, man, woman, and child, don't follow the leader. Think for yourself. It will be a lot better off. And listen to your heart. Our current Jupiter has just ingressed to Aquarius, new phase of Pluto. I pretty much can't say that enough. Also, the current North Node in Gemini helping us to rethink and revisit the inspirations upon which our country was founded. Aquarius, the individuated unconscious, a process of waking up to your individuated inspirational self, not follow the leader, not go with the status quo. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. This is a quote from Carl Jung, and it's a little confusing, but what he's trying to say is that once you consciously decide not to be like other people and to think for yourself, then you will begin to grow by leaps and bounds. He says if you don't consciously make the effort to do so, then you're going to be stuck in a loop of doing what other people think you should do, or living your life for approval, or going with the status quo just because it's perhaps easier to do. And he said you will be stuck, and you will think that your life is fated and you can't move and grow or evolve. Are we as a people making a quantum leap toward the individuated unconscious, or the Aquarian state of evolution? Jeffrey said in the late 1990s, that 70% of the people were in the consensus state. That means I will do what I am told. I will go along with the greatest number of people and what they believe in. 27% were in an individuated state, saying, no, thank you. I will think for myself, no matter what the cost. But then less than 3% were in the spiritual state, which is coming right from the heart. But he said, this is all adjusting all the time. people are adjusting their options and parameters. So perhaps now more of us are in the individuated state, transiting to the spiritual state. And one thing I want to point out before I forget is this concept of religious freedom and how we separated from the rules of Britain, the British rules, in 1776 and began our colonies in Northeast America. One thing that I want to point out, and I'm trying to choose my words here, is that we probably not intentionally did not allow for the religious freedom of the native people that were here. And so there's incredible irony in our seeking religious freedom in a new land, but actually coming into and colonizing another people's land that had been there for thousands upon thousands of years. We owe the Native American people, their descendants, a tremendous debt. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so back to this one real quickly. Regarding the religious freedom, what I wanted to say is that a lot of people believe that Benjamin Franklin and some of his statesmen, perhaps Alexander Hamilton, were able to view the ceremonies of what we might call the Iroquois nation. It wasn't exactly the Iroquois people. It was a tribe of the Iroquois people called the Haudenosaunee, who practiced circle council confederacies, what we now call the New York area. Back then it was the Northern Territories of New York. But that they were invited to the native people's ceremonial practices and their way of governing and leadership, and they were all done by circle councils. So it could very well be that our Declaration of Independence, our Articles of Confederation, and our subsequent translating of the Constitution of the United States and transcription of the Constitution of the United States was founded upon Native American principles of democracy, the tribal circles, and that sparked the idea for our Articles of Confederacy. The Haudenosaunee means people building an extended house, or more commonly referred to as people of the longhouse. And some of these words, like house and confederacy and council, so to speak, are going to sound very current to today. They are an extended tribe who are related to the Iroquois Confederacy that inhabited the Northeast Territories of North America long before Europeans arrived. They probably practices their practice of circle councils for at least 1,000 years, if not longer. The longhouse was a metaphor introduced by the Peacemaker at the time of the formation of the Confederacy. The Peacemaker is a personage that they thought was a messenger from God who traveled and taught the various tribes, and this is a subject we're going to get into in the next presentation. But the longhouse was a metaphor introduced by the Peacemaker at the time of the formations of the Confederacy, meaning that the people are meant to live together as families in the same house. And there are longhouses today still where various tribes do ceremony and hold traditional events, and I would say it's to them it's like what our church is to us. Today, this means that those who support the traditions, beliefs, values, and authority of the Confederacy are to be known as the Haudenosaunee. The founding constitution of the Confederacy brought the Seneca, Cayuga, Onondaga, Oneida, and Mohawk nations under one law. Together they were called the Five Nations by the English and Iroquois by the French. We also refer to ourselves, they said, as Ongwe-Honwe, meaning that we are the original people, or the first people of this land. The Haudenosaunee Nation is actually 6 separate nations of people who have agreed to live under the traditional law of governance that they call the Great Law of Peace. The Great Law of Peace was brought by the so-called Peacemaker and taught to these people, and then taught to perhaps our founding fathers. The Great Law of Peace is the founding constitution of the 6 Nations Iroquois Confederacy. It is an oral tradition. Remember, we have Gemini rising in the 3 a.m. Sibley chart. Oral tradition, codified I mean, it is symbolized in a series of wampum belts, signs, and symbols now held by the Onondaga Nation. So their stories were passed down for hundreds of generations with beadwork, signs and symbols on stones or jewelry or rocks or inscription of some sort, or on leather belts or hides. The Great Law of Peace defines the functions of the Grand Council and how the Native nations can resolve disputes between themselves and still maintain peace. So before I forget, I do want to say that we owe a huge debt to our Native American brothers and sisters, the descendants of all of the great tribes and all the great nations before the we Europeans moved westward. We owe them a tremendous debt. We owe them tremendous respect. And I think we can learn a lot, especially at this crux point in our government, in our United States history, to re-examine what were their original teachings, what were their wisdom teachings, and re-examine the import of these teachings and where did they come from and what do they really mean. We have a lot of work to do, but I think it can really change our world, our nation and our world for the better if we concentrate on these concepts and where they came from and try to remember and try to honor and learn from the descendants of the Native American Indian and all indigenous people for that matter. So I'm going to pause here for a moment, but I just want to say about the Haudenosaunee that there are tales of a peacemaker who traveled among the Iroquois and neighboring tribes in about this time, around the 1700s, over a span of 1,000 years, spreading his message of peace, unity, and the power of the good mind, meaning thinking good thoughts, thinking clearly, holding a good thought. And again, that speaks to Uranus rising in the Sibley chart and our Gemini rising in the Sibley chart and our Gemini North Node right now. Oral history says that it may have taken him 40 years to reach everyone in the Iroquois territories at that time, and that he was met with much skepticism. He continued, and he was able to persuade 50 leaders of the current local tribes then, to receive his message. He gathered them together and recited the passages of the Great Law of Peace. He assigned duties to each of the leaders. He selected the women as the clan mothers, to lead the family clans and select the male chiefs. The Peacemaker then established clans along the Haudenosaunee as a way to unite the 5 nations and as a form of social order. Was there divine intervention with the circle councils? Was there also divine intervention, so to speak, with the signing of the Declaration of Independence and later the Constitution? If so, with current Saturn and Jupiter having passed Pluto in Capricorn, beginning new phase in Aquarius, are we to look to the past to shine the light, the past and our ancestors and the original people and the original teachings to shine a light on our future? I'm going to pause right here. This is Grandmother Turtle. This is their totem, or the great tree of all life, of all the nations. This is likened to the eagle at the center of all things, like our North Pole, where there's great power, where all things come together from our Earth's point of view. And these are emblems of United Nations of the Haudenosaunee. And remember, they were animal, plant, and mineral symbols. They were not considered gods of any sort. These kinds of teachings all stem from the last matriarchy that was earth-based, and nature was God. Okay, we're back, and we're now going to talk about the Lakota creation story and the Lakota sky maps. We're about an hour in. These are slides from a gentleman. I don't have his name right in front of me right now, but he made these slides. They're done in conjunction with Cinta Gleske University in South Dakota near the Rosebud Reservation. I think his name, no, I can't think of his name offhand. But these are slides made by a certain gentleman, and I'll find the reference at the end of this presentation. So we're going to talk about, I skipped one, there we go. These slides were done by Victor Deauville, called Lakota Astronomy. And this is where these pictures are coming from. So I'm going to tell a little story here, a Lakota creation story. And I'm going to synopsize it. Don't worry. The first being was created was rock, formed from vast space. When rock or Ea became aware, from that first thought, an eruption or an explosion occurred, and Ea or rock yearned to be compassionate, to create others, to relate to, and Ea opened up his very veins and let the energy go. The waters, the sky, the earth, the sun were born, but they were lonely as well. So as time moved on, soon the moon, the wind, the thunder beings were created, and the earth created passion. And it was finally called creation, which is but a story, quote, story, that grows with time and space, I'm told, so that we can remember. So that's part of the Lakota creation story. That's a very brief excerpt from it. But really what it's telling is a love story. And if you look at the one passage where it says, the sun, the moon, the wind, the earth, the sky, the thunder beings were created, and the earth created passion. Well, all of these beings, so to speak, love one another. The earth loves the sun, and the sun loves the earth, and the moon as well. And if you've ever really spent time being on the earth, meditating, walking on her, you'll know that she loves the very ground that you stand on. However much you love the earth mother and think she's wonderful, she blesses the very ground upon which your feet stand. She loves you more. If you've ever felt embraced by the womb of the earth with Father Sky overhead, or fallen in love with the stars or the trees, you know what the Lakota are talking about. And one of my most profound experiences, because I've had the, I guess, the fortune of having Native American teachers, was observing the winter sky in a place in near Davis, California, called the Causeway, where the earth meets the sky over expansive rice fields and long fields that lead to the horizon, and there are bird sanctuaries there. I was watching one morning the mists of the earth rise up to meet the very, very gentle sun that was coming out in the morning. And to me, it was just such a tremendous greeting. It was revelatory. And then the migratory birds started to fly over. The geese, believe it or not, the pelicans, and what we now consider to be some of the last of the swans that migrated during the January over that area. And I was spellbound. So the creation stories have a lot of truth to them. They are encoded, they are symbolic, but we can learn a lot if we're patient and reverent and we meditate upon them and really, really think about them and spend time in nature thinking about them. But it is a love story of one being yearning for another. What our current Pluto stellium might mean to some astrologers, is that Saturn, the rock, so to speak, is separating from Pluto to Aquarius, along with Jupiter, as a rebellion against the ultra-authoritarianism or the threat of that in our current world government. But that's one way of looking at it. That's one way of looking at the rock Saturn. The way that I look at the rock Saturn and my teachers look at Saturn, I had one teacher who taught me a lot about astrology, Native American astrology. He was Puta, from the Puta tribe, and Modoc. And what we look at as the rock or Saturn is a new way to read the signs and symbols inscribed on the rocks and the hides and the shells and the embroidery, and a new way to read these signs and reinterpret them. So my Saturn is literally an inscription on a rock and a new interpretation. And that's, to me, is what Jupiter surpassing Saturn and Pluto in Capricorn. Jupiter and Saturn surpassing Pluto in Capricorn is all about. Enlightenment of the old signs and symbols. Wikapi Wasloye. Wikapi means star in Lakota. Wasloye means knowledge. And they say what is sacred above is sacred below. That might sound familiar. Is the knowledge of astronomy and how it relates to the Lakota nation. To the Lakota nation is what the star bundle keeper or the medicine man once possessed. In the past, the knowledge of the stars and how they moved about in the night sky in relationship to the OTHE or people and the landforms on Earth made the Lakota successful in their endeavors. So long before Greek times, long before we ever thought of it, the Lakota people were corresponding the lights in the sky to points on the land and helping them with their migrations and to roam about and do their ceremonies. In my opinion, that was an ancient form of our current day geodetics, the correspondence between lights in the sky and places on the earth. They not only had the lights in the sky, as the lights in the sky moved across the sky, lead them to where the sacred places were to do their ceremonies, but they also, their religion, their God, they thought of, God was synonymous with the sun, and the lights were lesser gods, and they believed that if they followed these gods, they were following God and the gods. And this was their religion. This was their form of religious freedom, was to be migratory and roam and follow the signs in the sky. And that is what was taken from them. They were not allowed to continue to do that. And we need to regard that. They were not allowed to keep their religious freedom in that sense. In the Sioux philosophy, while the rock is the grandfather of all, and really remember that does equate very much to our Saturn, nevertheless, with earth and sky and sun, he is combined into the one being and substance of Wankantanka, the Great Spirit, just as the four colors of the quarters unite into one creation. Upper Missouri tribes of hundreds of years ago, the native Sioux people, honored the rock, the grandfather of all things, in their medicine lodge. So you can see how powerful this rock was in Lakota teachings, and it likens Saturn for us today, very much so. But anyway, they honored the grandfather of all things in their medicine lodge because he is the oldest and will endure the longest. The rock, who is the core of time, is Lord of the abiding mountains, but his domain extends all over the earth. In him lies authority. He is the avenger. He constructs and destroys. It is on the primeval rock, lifted above the abyss, that the great elk stood forth in the dawn of time, and baying across chaos, summoned the first morning of the world. There's much more to their stories and their wisdom teachings than we realize. And that's what I'm so excited about, and so many other people are, that we can discover this. We white people, that we can discover this. They believe the sky mirrored the earth and vice versa. And the way they express this is what is sacred above is sacred below. So here's a depiction, a drawing of a buffalo hide. And it shows a ring of lights in the sky. This is the ring that they would see in the sky. And these are the corresponding buttes, rivers, and valleys that they would see on the earth. And for instance, every constellation or bright star in the sky would have its own rock, so to speak, corresponding. And one of my teachers put it this way. He said, every tree has its star. And he said, before you cut down any tree, you must ask the star if it's okay. If the star says yes, then you may proceed. If the star says no, don't touch it. I'll never forget that. That has always stayed with me. Wanagi Takanku. This is the Lakota. This stands for Lakota star maps. This is a Lakota star map depiction of the Milky Way. Here's the Milky Way here. And as you can see, there's a large area here that is surrounded by what we would consider in the sky to be a star circle that corresponds with the land. In this circle on the land, I hope that this is making sense, on the land is the Black Hills of South Dakota. It's their sacred ceremonial ground. And around here somewhere is, I think, what's called Devil's Tower. And then this, which looks like a hawk, is actually a drawing of, this is going to be Rigel, this is going to be Sirius, this is going to be Betelgeuse, this is the Belt of Orion, and this is the Pleiades, and this is the constellation of Cancer. So these lights in the sky are depicting a center in the sky that also, that you can see looking toward the Milky Way, and also it depicts a center on our land. So these lights in the sky and the Milky Way correspond to the land. I hope I'm making sense here, because it's a little hard to explain. The Milky Way they thought of as a ghost trail, place where the souls make their journey after death. The Milky Way is made up of campfires of deceased relatives in the sky. This is a side view of the Milky Way. So just moving a little bit closer in here, all of their depictions and their stories, they're not myth, and they're not really stories. There's a lot of truth to them. And they're recognizing that this place, close to the constellation of Orion, is where new souls came into our galaxy or our dimension. And it's also where the old souls diminished and died and went outside of our galaxy or our dimension. So this is a port of entry and exit for souls in this very large part of the Milky Way here, that some people call the womb of the Milky Way. And it is on one side of the Milky Way, the outside of the Milky Way, it's considered to be in line with the constellation of Orion, and then toward the middle of the Milky Way, on the other side of the Earth, so to speak, or the other direction from the Gemini constellation, is Sagittarius, and that's said to be the very center of the Milky Way, the center of our galaxy here, center of our galaxy here. And then the direction of Gemini constellation from Earth would be more on the outskirts here. I don't want to get too much into cosmology and celestial mechanics, but that's what that means. And then here, as you can see, is a galaxy, and these are depicted very much in the in all petroglyphs for like the past 1,000 years. It has been discovered in the 20th century that Lakota star maps were recorded on a pair of buffalo hides, preserved in the Black Hill Territory of South Dakota, near a ceremonial place of purification, and passed down from generation to generation. We don't really know how long the buffalo hides that had depictions of this sort, how old they are, but we do know that the ones that are in possession right now are hundreds of years old, and that they're probably preceded by earlier hides that could be as much of as 1,000 years old. That's our best guesstimation. But these lights in the sky that correspond to the Earth have been recorded for hundreds and hundreds of years. One of the hides is an Earth map with buttes, rivers, and ridges. The other is a star map, and these two correspond and are the same because what's in the Earth is in the stars. So there's one of the stars, there's one of the Earth. The stars were called the Holy Breath of Great Spirit. They gave the people spiritual instruction. Traditional Lakota believed that ceremonies done on Earth were being performed simultaneously in the spirit world, when sacred power could be drawn down. And there's so many examples of this. One of the best examples that I know of is, I'll think of it in a minute. I'll try to think of it, and I'll give it to you at the end of the lecture. Can't think of the gentleman's name, But anyway, I'll make a note of it and I'll tell you at the end of the lecture of drawing down power from the sky. Oh, it's the musician who did the song called Wichitaito, and I perhaps should speak on that at some time. Jim Pepper, and he wrote this song Wichitaito, I think in the late 80s or 90s, and it was a water ceremony to draw down the spirits of the sky. And his description of the ceremony is just priceless. He says that the people would drum and pray and sing and dance to the lights in the sky and appeal to the lights in the sky to come down and meet them halfway. And one of his songs is called Spirits in the Trees, that they really could discern lights in the trees when they did their ceremonies. So many stories, so little time. So the Lakota people that were drawing these maps and looking at the sky and finding where to do their power ceremonies needed to migrate and follow the lights in the sky that led them. And this following and this migration was synonymous with what they call religious freedom, following the sun, following the lights in the sky to perform their ceremonies, being free. And they can no longer do that, but we need to regard their ancestral ways and what they used to do and somehow right the wrong somehow. We need to try. It starts with recognition and caring and reverence. Heart. What is in the stars is on the earth, and what is on the earth is in the stars. This idea unites the ceremonial map and the circle of stars, not only with sites in the Black Hills, but with a round of ceremonial actions at sacred sites there, ending with a sun dance at the Bear's Lodge, Devil's Tower. And a lot of their sacred ceremonies were done on lunations and during solstices or equinoxes or eclipses. And this was the same with the Haudenosaunee. They said it was 100 times more powerful to do a ceremony during an eclipse or an auspicious time like an equinox or a solstice or a lunation than any other time of the year. Okay. What is sacred above is sacred below. And so this is a depiction. Don't let it confuse you. Again, here's the great circle of stars in the sky. And these are circumpolar stars. It means that the North Star in this depiction, no, that's not right. It just means that this is a circle of great prominent stars in the sky, and that in the middle of this is a great center. Oh yes, that is correct. It is correct. So this would be about where we consider our North Star Polaris to be today, right here in the center. He said in the center resides a great bird like a thunderbird. I think it's pronounced Wakanyanka, and there's great power here. And so this is where they had their ceremonial sites in correspondence to the sky. And as you can see here, the constellation of Cancer is corresponding to Devil's Tower. This group of stars here with the belt of Orion is corresponding to a place on Earth where they did ceremony, so on and so forth. The center of all things is right here in the center of the hoop on the Earth. So, okay. So that's how they corresponded to what was above is below. And I just want to point out that the ever-shifting positions of the stars and the changing course of the universe reminds the people that nothing remains the same, and we, a mere speck in the universe, must change. So as the stars moved overhead, they migrated with them, and that was their form of religious freedom, and continuously changing and moving and growing and evolving. They didn't stay doing ceremony in one place. They said we must continue to change and evolve. Moreover, we must strive to restore our relationship to the cosmos and the stars within, lest we face the same monotonous existence of or cycle of life that we are currently trapped in. So their whole existence was to move and grow and change and evolve, and they realized this, and they learned this from the actions of the movements of the stars. In contrast to the disrespect that's been shown to the sacred Black Hills, the Lakota Sioux believe in blessing blessing the next 7 generations, all people, as do the Hopi, so that their ceremony will perpetuate and protect all people everywhere. They say it is very good to keep the good mind, for those who know to continue, because we know the ancestors are watching. So our sacred truths can continue to join those on earth with those in the sky, and we know that no time or distance can ever separate us. What a concept. Okay, Sintagleska University. I want to show this real quickly. Again, this shows you a little bit more of the great racetrack in the sky that corresponds to a point on the earth and where they did their main ceremonies. This symbol here symbolizes the 4 colors that stand for the 4 directions. The 4 spokes stands for the 4 winds and directions. The number 4 stands for the universe. Everything in the universe consists of 4 parts. And the circle connects everything together. Everything is round and patterned from this. Their teachings are coming from the last matriarchal teachings. It's the circle and the center of the circle. That's a matriarchal teaching, and the power in the center, and how everything is equal and unified and comes together by the 4 directions. So I just wanted to point that out. And then, not to confuse you, don't stress out at this. I just want to show you one thing that oh, I lost my place here. Just one moment. Let's see if I can find it. Bear with me a moment. Okay, I've already gone past it. Okay. But this is showing you how close the center of all things is to Polaris, our North Star. And in the center was what they called the Great Thunderbird, or the Wakinian. This is a place of power. So if you look at our current pole star, the last pole star that we had around 3000 BC, or the first dynasty of Egypt, which was a heightened civilization and a stair-stepped evolutionary civilization, was around 3000 BC. And then prior to that, our pole star was in Vega, and it will be again in 15,000 AD. And then after that, the pole star will actually be in Deneb. You can't see it here, or maybe you can. Deneb in the constellation of Cygnus. So you can see here that the great center that they are ascribing to in the sky is in between the 4 pole stars of our Earth, and the 4 stars that our Earth orients itself to over a period of about 26,000 years. So in the middle of this polar region is great power, and the orientation or the tilt or the axis of our Earth points all around this area, and they say that that's a great stirring and brings great concentration of power to the center. This is a place where shamans would, the circumpolar area in the north is a place where shamans would appeal to and try to visit, to appeal to great mystery and come back with answers. And this is what the shamans did. They went to due north to come back with answers for the tribe. There's thought to be great power here because of perhaps the polarized or magnetized activity of a circle motion around this great center, that energy concentrates in the center. So that's what I wanted to show you, is that this is a center between the 4 pole stars. Polaris, this would be Thuban, this would be Vega, and I believe up here that I can't see, but right up here is Deneb. So they knew a lot. They knew an awful lot. So this is going to lighten up a little bit. Let's see. Yeah, this is going to lighten up a little bit. Bear with me a moment. Yeah, here we go. So this is Zion National Park. And when I was there was a woman who was married to a native man who told us stories. If she liked you, she would tell you more. This is called Wolf Rock. This is a rock that gets a shadow on it at sundown at the summer solstice. that looks exactly like a wolf. This is the face of the rock that has inscriptions on it. This is the rock that makes the shadow at the at sundown of the summer solstice. And as you can see, it sort of has the outline of a wolf head and a wolf stance here and wolf feet. Here's the inscription on the face of the rock. It has a spiral or a galaxy or great mystery. It has a wolf, and it has the bird people. These are not just sightings of wolves and birds. These are spirits. And these bird inscriptions mean the gods are touching the earth. The people that fly in the sky are coming down to the earth. So this was many things, but it's a spiritual ceremonial center. And what a lot of people think of as a spiral or a galaxy, to many indigenous people of the Northwest tribes, this was actually a clock. And on the solstices, and especially the equinoxes, there would be a shadow that would come right to the center of this creation or this depiction, and it would point right here. And that would signal the solstices and the equinoxes. And these clocks are, for the past 500 years, as far as we know, they were made maybe about 500 to 1,000 years ago, are accurate to the solstice sun on the equinoxes and the solstices, where they have a degree of shadow or marking from the sun to 1/1000th of an inch. They are tremendously correspond to the solstice and the equinox sun, as opposed to marker rocks that mark the shadow of that sun on the rock. So there's a rock that stands apart from these rocks that marks the point on the rock when the sun is in a certain position. So I stayed there and I watched the shadow, and it was around the solstice, and I watched it come very near to the center of the petroglyph. And then she had told me to look the other direction. Don't look at what's apparent. Always look away and look in the other direction. And this is what I saw. On the eastern horizon, there was a wolf head and shape. And I'm not going to spend time on this. You can say that maybe there was a wolf there once, and maybe the stone took upon its spirit and its characterization. But this was due east. So on the summer solstice, or about the time of that with a full moon, this would create the iconic figure of the wolf howling behind the full moon, or the sun as it rose along this southern area. We don't know which they were looking at, but to some degree, this is a wolf sentinel signaling that time of year, the solstice or the equinoxes, and this is what they see, looking due east, directly away from that rock, the opposite direction of the rock. And so this is what I was told. The medicine people can see, and visitors can see if they are reverent and patient. These are Zion Canyon as well, and this is probably a moon calendar of some sort. It's hard to say. They were migratory, so it probably is not a sun calendar. That would take too long. These figures, I don't know. They're holding it up or creating it, or maybe they're spiritual figures, or maybe they're coming down to meet us. We don't know. These are the corn maidens, and I hope to get into that into another lecture. They preserved agriculture for the people and led the people and showed the people how to plant and exist and thrive, and they visited the four corners of the earth and helped people to plant crops, and helped people work in conjunction with the earth and understand the ways and the natural laws and the natural seasons of the earth and keep the earth in balance. This is a woman giving birth. This is not a spiral. This is actually concentric circles. It could mean many things, but they are clocks, they are markers, and there is definitely a marker standing somewhere that would have marked the center of this during a solstice or an equinox. And again, this could be a moon calendar. It could show an eclipse of some sort. It's really hard to say, but it really looks like it has, in the head of a snake, and it's marking time of some sort. And there's yours truly. There I am, paying homage to the spirits. It was a very powerful place. Here's the, I guess you could call it deer or antelope, and it was a place of power, and they would, they wrote so many things there. They talked about the spirits or the game or the plants or the fish, or marked their hands or their tribe or their clan. It's hard to say what all of this means, but it is a place of power and ceremony. But more importantly, instead of looking this way, I was told to look out that way. And this is what I saw when I looked out that way and became very calm and patient. This is a marking stone, and this was in the due south. And so this is going to be their marker when the sun rises in its zenith at the summer solstice, and at its lowest during the winter solstice. This is their marker, and this is how they knew to mark time, and this was their calendar. And you see how sophisticated and observant they were, and that they had a mark that they had a point where they could see where the sun rose and the stars rose, and they could see the zodiacal climb across the sky, across the ecliptic in the day and the night. This is due south. I was amazed when I saw that. And she said, "You're absolutely right." Okay. So we're about an hour and a half. I want to tell you a little story about the Hopi. They have an extensive creation story, of course, but I just want to touch on it, of how they emerged from the lower world through an opening in the earth, and how this kind of opening, or sipapu, would lead to the opening of the subsequent 4 worlds. In the beginning was only endless space, similar to the Lakota story. Only Tiwa, the sun spirit, existed along with some other lesser gods. Tiwa created the first world and watched them. Subsequently, and over thousands of years, he was deeply disappointed and thought, "What I have created is imperfect. These creatures do not understand the meaning of life." 2 more worlds were created and destroyed, but the creatures did not understand the meaning of life. And now we are in the 4th world, according to the Hopi, which began with the emergence from the lower world to the upper world, the names of the tribes, the different nationalities, their languages, and direction of their migrations. Now this, to me, heralds back to the Tower of Babel, where it's said or passed down that people emerged from the Great Flood and tried to build a tower to the heaven for whatever reason. Well, the Hopis emerged as well, but they were a humble people. They always have been. They're a peaceful tribe. They live simply, and they do their ceremonies and their traditions and their stories and their songs and their dancers for the whole of the whole world. Hopi means peace, and they are a people of peace, and they pray for the entire world every day, as they have for probably thousands of years. So when they emerged from the lower world to the upper world, they were given the names of their tribes, the different nationalities, the different colors, the 4 directions. They were given their languages and the direction of the migrations. And they were basically told to migrate and learn the ways of the natural world. So do you see how perhaps we as humans have been given opportunities many times over by great teachers from somewhere to learn the right way, to learn the good heart and the good mind. And I might say also that to an astrologer, if you think in terms of the worlds and you think in terms of the ice ages, we've had we know that we've had, we can record human life back more than bear with me just a moment, more than 300,000 years, and that every ice age lasts about 100,000 years. And so if you think of us having started the 4th world around 11,000 BC, then we have been in the 4th world for about nearly 13,000 years. So in my calculations, and it gets very, very involved, A world is anywhere from about, can be considered anywhere from about 12 to 13, maybe even 14,000 years. But we're at pretty much at the end of the fourth world now in the grand scheme of things. The people of not good heart were not allowed to climb the reed out of the sipapu through the opening to the upper world. The people in the new world were instructed not to forget how the sun and moon were made on this new home, and not to forget why they came to this world, or they will lose their way, disappear into the wilderness, and be forgotten. And on that note, I really do believe that they are not to forget the love story between the sun and the moon and the earth. To me, it is a great love story, a yearning for relating and dialogue and communion and passion. They were told to begin their migrations and that they would learn about the forces of nature in their travels. This is a sign of the head of Copacelli, the fertility god, that was very a popular depiction between the beginning of this millennia up till about 1700 AD. These are corn, meaning fertile crops. This is the Bear Clan of the Hopi. This is each one of them saying, I am here, I am here, I am here. This down here that you can't see is rain cloud and the corn, and this just shows fertility and prosperity, and that they are growing and multiplying, and they have plenty. This is a depiction of a sipapu. We don't know if it's man-made or was just there. I don't know, but it's a very old photograph of what's considered to be an opening in the earth. It could be the top of a ceremonial kiva that was man-made. I don't know if this is natural or not, but this is a depiction of a sipapu, the hole in the earth that the natives emerged from at the beginning of the fourth world. And I want to add here, before I forget, that the Hopi say there have been 3 worlds effectively destroyed. We're now in the 4th. And we got into the worlds and the ice ages and the polar shifts in the last lecture. But from what I understand, not many people survive on Earth. Not many people survive polar shifts and ice ages. But the Hopi say that they did, that they have been here from the very beginning of this earth, and that they survived every polar shift and every ice age. Perhaps they went below, we don't know, but they say they survived, and they retain all of the original teachings from the great teachers, the great Peacemaker from the beginning of time. They are the record holders. They are the original people, and they retain that memory, and they keep it in their dances and their ceremonies and their symbols. And this could be a depiction of sky gods. No, this wouldn't be sky gods. These are just chiefs. They don't. If they had webbed feet or bird feet, they would be sky gods. But these are chiefs that have their hand in one side, in one part of great mystery, or the center of all things. These are chiefs that are probably shamans that contain power, who carry power. They have a connection to the center of all things. And this is very similar. These are also very similar to the depictions of the circles of the sky on the buffalo hides and the corresponding circles of ceremony on the ground. I can't see, he has a staff in his right hand. I can't see what he has. I can't make that out. But they definitely have a hand in power and the center of all things. So these were shamans. And please know that the what we call shamanism stemmed from the matriarchy. It's the oldest religion so-called religion that we know of. It's a religion of nature. This is Prophecy Rock. I had the extreme opportunity of seeing this. It happened with a teacher. I didn't know we were going there. And it is very powerful. It's a place of tremendous reverence. This is the Great Spirit's path, or the road plan, that was first given to the Hopi by a messenger called Masa, around 1100 AD in the old village of Araibi. And this is said to have been inscribed by the messenger they called Messiah himself. The figure at the lower left is Messiah, holding his torch in his right hand. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's the torch. This would be the right hand, and meaning light, illumination. And in his left hand, he holds the reed through which the Hopi emerged onto the surface of the earth thousands of years ago. The circle to the right of the reed represents the fourth circle of the fourth world. The rectangle is the sipapu through which the emergence was completed, and the opening through which communication is maintained by all generation. It's interesting that the opening mentions communication and how that was destroyed by so-called God for one civilization, and it was instructed by a messenger from God in this civilization. So communication is very, very important. The upper straight line emerging from the rectangle is the materialistic path followed by many people. The two-hearteds and the false tongues. Notice they hold hands to their unified commitment to the materialistic way of life. It ends in the crooked line that goes to oblivion and indicates chaos. It goes nowhere. The lower straight line is the slow path of agriculture and reverence for the earth that the Hopi have been allowed to follow and are told to continue, the path of the traditional Hopi. It ends with an elderly man. Here's a detail. Standing in a tall cornfield. He symbolizes peace and prosperity awaiting those who remain faithful. Along this line there are 3 circles, 1, 2, 3, and a vertical line. The 3 circles represent the prophesied world conflicts. The third 2, World War I, World War II, have been fulfilled. The last one hopefully will not be fulfilled. We will not have another conflict. But we have a choice right here. This is the line that we all have right now, you and I, is a choice to abandon the world of evenness and peace and agriculture and reverence for the earth, and join the materialistic path and give in to temptation and abandon our ancient faith and our ancient teachings that we have been given from up above, and falling before the open choice, and this choice falls before the third circle. So there's still time, I was told, to make a choice. The road plan, as this is called, is both a warning and an offer of hope, and tells what should be planned for. And I remember telling my guide something along the lines of, who said we don't come with instructions, and he just laughed. So I'm just an old hippie doing my job, as so many of us are. We're here and now, giving this information, receiving this information, disseminating this information because it's time. Astrology is the symbolic language of universal symbols. If we consider the U.S. Sibley chart with Gemini rising, we as a nation have relied on our mental capacities for a very long time. We don't yet have a chart of renewed constitution, but Jeffrey taught us that we can learn from our past. The south node of the U.S. chart is in Aquarius, stationing direct, conjunct the moon. Sagittarius is on the descendant. The original oral teachings of the First Nations and the First People knew what we, European-born descendants, are just beginning to grasp. That we are much more alike than we are different. We know that we are at a place in time of very conscious opportunity. That what we create affects the collective consciousness of all around us and affects the earth. Let us embrace reverence of our diversity and the richness of the earth, so that as we move forward, humanity changes and the earth changes, and we don't remain the same. We are truly involved in an evolutionary process, this grand experiment of the fourth world, if you like. And the evolution is this. The healing of the Earth Mother must come first, and simultaneously the spiritual evolution of humanity. So reverence precedes evolution. If all evolution proceeds as planned, we have a grand opportunity to prepare to climb through that portal, that sipapu into a new sky world, to evolve through the emotional body this time, The U.S. Sibley chart has Mercury, the Sun, Jupiter, and Venus rising in Cancer, and help to create a collective consciousness of humanity from the heart. And then please remember that the north node of Neptune is in Leo, and that is Neptune's north node, and it's right here in the Sibley chart, north node of Neptune, and the north node of Neptune has been in the sign of Leo, or the heart center, for at least 1,000 years, and it will be there for several more 100 years. So we're a nation that is learning, if we will, learn from the past. We will learn to live in the heart and come from the heart center and be led in that way and be on and stay on a good path. We owe our First Nations people a huge debt. At our country's Pluto return at this time, let's get it right this time. It is in these times that we will witness collectively a progressive elimination of man-made law and the progressive inclusion of natural law, so that the totality of nature can return to a state of balance. These are Jeffrey's words. My point is, we had a world like that before. So I just want to add that we're at a tremendous time, a great opportunity to wrong the right and regard our First Nations people and honor them and give them reverence and learn from them and listen to them. One of my teachers told me that if enough percentage of so-called white people show sincere, patient interest in the history and the teachings of the descendants of the First Nations, that more of their teachings will be revealed. He said they probably will never, all of them will probably never all be revealed, but there are more, and they will be revealed when the time is right, when a certain percentage of European-born people show sincere interest. And that makes me think also that are some of us who were in consensus state, are we now transitioning to the individuated state, where we're learning to think for ourselves and re-examine the old teachings of the past, because in some respect there really is nothing new under the sun. There's only the interpretation of it, which is Sagittarius archetype. These are Hopi sayings. And here are some references. And that is my video for this evening. And let me get my cursor back here. And I just want to say to you, thank you for coming. May you live in health and peace and do the work that you are called to do, and welcome back.